Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad that you are here joining us today. Hopefully, this is going out. We are, of course, as usual, having a few technical issues. That is all on me. I think we are live now. Finally, yay! Thank
Woohoo.
you, everybody, for being here. I appreciate your patience. As you know, or you have learned by now, I'm not the most technical savvy person that is out there, but I'm learning. So hopefully one of these days I will actually have everything go off without a hitch. As you can see, I have a guest. My guest today is Peter Alessandria, movie producer and wonderful friend. And he is here to talk about some of the things that he is up to, as well as answer your questions. Peter,
Hi, Heather. Hi, everybody. Excited
it
to
is
be here.
wonderful to have you. I think I've got a few extra
Hi, Heather. Hi,
sounds
everybody.
going. Let me just turn this all the way down. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Peter, why don't you tell them about your movie, and then we'll jump in and get right into some of the questions that people have. And by the way, hello to all of you that are joining us. I see you're already typing in hello. I appreciate your patience as always.
Yeah, it's great. We're watching the comments come in. So thank you guys for being here. So they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I'm going to show the trailer for the film. And then it's about 3 minutes, and then we can start taking some questions. So I'm going to share my screen.
And do we want to share that now? Do you think, or wait till a couple more people join us?
Okay, we could wait a few minutes.
Um,
So
we
I'll tell you a little bit about the film then. So actually, Heather and I will be together in Atlanta, and we'll announce this again on June 20th. It's a Friday, and we're actually going to be doing an exclusive screening down there of I'm calling it a sneak peek preview because the film isn't finished, but it's over 2 hours long, and it's a full film. So Heather has come on board as a sponsor, co-producer, co-presenter. So we're really looking forward to that. Tickets are available if you go to everysoulknows.com. You can find tickets if you're in the Atlanta area. If you're not in that area, there are 5 other screenings that are planned for June and July. So maybe there's a local screening by you that you can come. And if you can't get to any of the in-person screenings, the preview is available online to watch. It's a $3.99 rental for 72 hours. Again, you can find that on the website as well, everysoulknows.com. The film, I've been working on this film for over 2 years now. I've interviewed 60 people. About half of them are near-death experiencers. The rest are psychics, channels, and mediums. And this was my attempt to get my questions answered. Questions like, what happens after we die? Right? Where do we come from before we're born into this world? These basic questions about the afterlife, which are really questions about life, I've found. And so working through this project has really helped me get answers to those questions. And we're going to talk about those today.
Sorry, I'm getting settled down here as you're talking. All right. And I'm very excited for all of you that plan to attend. I am excited to meet you. It's always fun to put a face and a name, to the name that I've seen in your comments. I know you don't all go by your regular name, but all of that will be fun. But Peter, yeah, why don't you go ahead and do show your movie preview and then start jotting down your questions, everybody in the chat, and we will try to answer them. And we certainly don't have the answers, but we can just share some of our, I don't know, what do you call them? Some of the things that we've learned.
Observations,
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
Let me say this too before we start. So I think, like many of the people that are watching this right now, Heather and I are not experiencers, right? I haven't had a near-death experience. I haven't even really I've had a couple what I might consider minor spiritually transformative experiences, but not like you're used to hearing in terms of interviews and all that on Heather's channel. So what I want to say to everybody, I'm guessing that a lot of you are in the same boat, and I say this at the beginning of the film, and that is, I'm not here, and I don't think Heather's here to try to convince anybody of anything. We're simply here to express, to share with you guys what we've learned on our journey that may help you along on your journey. But at the end of the day, we each have to decide for ourselves what's really true, what we believe. And so, one of the things that I do in the film, which I think is people are saying is very helpful, is I actually stop the film in several points and give people an opportunity to do a little guided meditation. And the purpose of the meditation is to allow the audience to go within. And I say, look, you've heard what everybody else has to say about this. Now's the time to go within and you discover your own inner wisdom and your own highest truth about everything that's been discussed. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. In terms of the afterlife, again, I say this at the beginning of the film, none of us are really going to know until we get there ourselves. So what we can do is we can take other people's experiences and then we can use that to discover our own wisdom, our own truth on all this. So that's kind of the background of today's discussion and the background for the film.
And it's interesting too, because I think the more that I listen to near-death experiences, you realize there's not, an absolute, because, you might hear somebody saying, this is what I saw and this is what I saw. And some people interpret that too as this is the way it is. But you find that there's just so many varied experiences that people do have. And that's why it's interesting to see a movie like yours, Peter, just to just see all of these people sharing their experiences, whatever those experiences were.
Now, what's really interesting, and a couple of people have pointed this out. So the interview process has been taking place over 2 years, and most of the people, especially the first 40 people or so, nobody except me knew who else was in the film, and nobody knew. And I start the film. The basic premise of the film is I have these questions, and if you go on the website everysoulknows.com, you can go to the questions page, and you can see there's 38 questions. And those are the questions, as I said earlier, that I wanted answers to. And so I started out by working through that list of questions, with each of the interviewees. And what's really interesting is, again, none of them knew who else was being interviewed. None of them certainly knew what anybody else's answers were. And yet you'll see in the film, they all fit together. The answers are all fit together like a puzzle, right? And to the point where some of them it seems like they're answering, each other's sentences. They're finishing each other's sentences and all of that. So while I can't say that what I'm presenting or what Heather is presenting in her podcast is the ultimate truth in the sense that this is it, it's very interesting to me that there's so much congruity and so much, and you can just get this in general by watching a lot of the NDE interviews. There's so much commonality in the experience. There's so much similarity in their experience, and the biggest thing I think, and this is for me what's really important, is it's similar in how the people are changed after these experiences, right? So they don't come back as the same people who started on this journey, on this experience. And I think that's the biggest thing. And to see the similarity and having spent time with each of these people now, the thing that I did that's a little different than what Heather and other people are doing is I was actually in the same room with everybody during the interviews. In many cases, I was driving them back and forth to the airport. I was taking them out for dinner. So I got to spend time with these people. And every single one of them has impressed me as genuine, caring, loving, compassionate people who are sharing their story because they want to make a difference in the world. I know some people have opinions that, some people think that, they're doing this to get rich. My sense is nobody's getting rich off telling their
Yeah.
NDE story. Some of them have sold books, but many of them, it's almost the opposite. They have to put up with a lot of trolling and a lot of debunking and a lot of, not so fun stuff on social media when they come out and they tell their stories. So, again, the thing for me is getting to know these people personally and seeing how they were transformed by their experience. And I'm proud to call every one of these people my friend. They've all inspired me. They've all helped me in my own journey, evolve and grow along spiritual lines.
And
So,
Peter, I just wanted to mention that Anne Marie, hello, Anne Marie. Nice to see you here. Um, she rented your movie And so that's kind of nice to hear that. And people can write your movie as well. We can talk more about that coming up. And I want to say thank you to Joe too, because Joe just said hit the like button for our friend Heather, and that would be awesome if you guys would give this a like. And I appreciate all your likes and comments and shares and all of that good stuff. But Peter, why don't you really quickly tell them where they could see your movie online, but then let's go ahead and share the clip so people that are not familiar with the movie can at least know some of the things that we're talking about.
All right, sounds good. So again, everything that you need to know about the film, you can find at everysoulknows.com. 3 words, Every Soul Knows. There's different pages, so you can see. Actually, another thing I'll mention real quick is that everybody's full interview is also available online for free on the website and on the film's YouTube channel. So many of the interviews ran between 30 and 60 minutes. And then from those full interviews, I took the clips, the segments for the film. But it was really important to me that everybody's voice be heard in full. So even before the film was released and finished, those interviews have been available, and people are binge watching the YouTube channel. The best part of this, one of the best parts, is every morning I go to my inbox and there's all these comments from people who are binge watching all the interviews. And everybody seems to be really grateful. I wanted to create a reference library, a reference resource for people who wanted to find out more about the near-death experience and other spiritually transformative experiences. So all that information is there for you to watch as soon as you're done with the live stream here today. And it's been really, really wonderful to see that these interviews and these people, they are transforming other people's lives by sharing their story, by having the courage. Some of you guys know Franco Romero. Franco's book and website was The Closet Spiritualist, because when he started telling his story, it was like coming out of the closet for him, so he was putting himself out there to share his story with the world.
That's
so
a lot of near-death experiencers, they keep it to themselves for often a decade or more before they have the guts to get out and share it.
Yeah, it can be very stigmatizing. A couple of the people that I interviewed, they've been telling their stories for a while, and in some cases their family still doesn't speak to them, or whatever. So there are challenges with all this, guys. And so again, I wanted to, my hats off. These people are the heroes, the people that come out and they tell their story. And again, from what I can tell, at least the people that I met, they all have a genuine intent to make the world a better place.
Well, let's go ahead and listen to some. Why don't you share your movie, the little clip of it that you have?
This is a trailer, so let's see.
I think this is the best thing going on anywhere, to be in human form incarnated on Earth at this time.
At the soul level, we decide in advance what characteristics, what personality traits, what challenges we want to take on.
The soul chooses who it's going to be born to, what family it will belong to.
And I've thought many times that I might be mandated to Earth. What did I do wrong? Why am I here again?
I felt the power of my soul, the part of me that has always lived and will never die.
I started to see this bright, bright light, this beautiful bright light directly above me. I was just being lifted up by love.
If you could imagine absolute love and absolute peace, that's all you felt in this energy.
That was one of the messages I was sent back with. Go back and tell them life is eternal.
That realm is sharp, clear, detailed, meaningful, powerful, filled with emotional truth and depth.
When Nolan flatlined, what I experienced was Mary Fran coming across the veil, and she scooped Nolan up out of his physical body. And they had this exquisite reunion that you can only imagine between a mother and son.
And suddenly I could breathe fine. I was incredibly conscious. I was more alive than I've ever been.
For every 100 souls that qualifies to come down to Earth, and you've got to be an advanced soul to come down here, there's only one body.
I said, I'm home. I'm finally home. I said that over and over.
Time starts to slow down, almost collapse on itself. I began to surrender to the concept of dying.
Everything that was temporal or physical or mortal about that soul was drawn aside, and I saw who he was, and I was in the presence of the divine.
Every single person is this light walking around the center of their body, in the center of their energetic structure, in the center of their chakra system is the heart. It's the heart center. I also understood that was heaven, but this is heaven. If you want to be in heaven, you can just be there.
60 interviews, 38 questions, all in a groundbreaking documentary about the afterlife. Every soul knows the joy of remembering who we really are.
Really looking forward to that. And Peter, it is it's actually the 20th, right? Friday now is what it is. Friday the 20th.
Friday, June 20th in Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got a couple other dates before that too, don't you?
Yeah. So if you're in Virginia, I'm going to be down there on June 13th. If you're in Maryland, I'm going to be down there on June 14th. And then I'm heading down to Durham, North Carolina for June 17th. Then I'm going down to Atlanta. We'll be there for June 20th. And then I have another screening happening in New Jersey at the end of like July 20th, I think it is. Again, all the information you can find on the website, everysoulknows.com. And there's a way to get tickets. The whole thing is right there online.
And you may have recognized some of those people, Chase, Scott, Evan, Betty, many of them. Of course, they've also been on my show, and you can also just go to my playlist. You can find the interviews that I did, as well as go to Peter's website and find more on that. And then, of course, the movie is going to be wonderful. I'm really looking forward to seeing it all put together. I've seen little glimpses here and there, Peter, but I haven't seen the whole thing. Now, if anybody's got some questions, start jotting them down. I did want to answer one over here. Somebody was asking, how do they share your death?
Heather, just before you go, they're saying your volume is a little low. Can you turn up the volume on your mic?
Is that better? Can you hear me here? Oh, you know what? I bet I have the wrong microphone on. Hang on a second. Oh, I do. Hang on. Oh, and you know, it's too late to switch. That is my bad, everybody. I'm so sorry. It's playing off of my computer instead of playing off my microphone. And
now I can't hear you at all. So we were hearing you a second ago. You're just kind of low.
How's that? Now can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah, I was saying I apologize because I set it up wrong, which again goes to my technical abilities here. And right before we started, I should have set it up to my microphone here, and I didn't. So instead, it's picking me up off of my computer, which is not going to be the quality. And I'm sorry if I'm softer. I do really apologize. You know, after we do
Maybe
about
speak
10
up just a little.
I'm going to get it right. You still can't hear me?
No, I can hear you, but I'm just saying for the audience.
Okay. Yeah. I'm talking loud, and I apologize. It's just, unfortunately, unless I stop the live, I can't change that. So, like I said, I'll get this down one of these days. So Peter, you're kind of my guinea pig because you're the very first time I've had a guest doing this live. And Peter can tell you that I sent him a few panicked texts the other day, just saying, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I'm not sure. I'm really confused. I'm overwhelmed. And I was I was talking quite a bit today to my producer who was helping set me up. And he said, make sure to switch your microphone. And of course, what did I do? I did not switch my microphone. So I apologize if you cannot hear me. So that's my bad.
All right. Well, they can hear you. It was just a little low, they said. So
Yeah,
let's jump into some of the questions. So Anne Marie has a question. David Such, in the clip that you just saw, David Such, who's an NDE researcher and author, he's interviewed thousands and thousands of NDEers, and he's a great guy, by the way. David makes a statement that you just saw in that little trailer that for every soul that wants to come to Earth, so there's like 100 souls that want to come to Earth, and there's only one body available. I don't know if those exact numbers are correct, but my understanding is, and other people have confirmed this, that there's more demand to participate in this incarnational in the Earth plane than there are bodies available to accommodate them. So I think the point is, I don't know if we can, hang our hat on the specific numbers, but the idea is that, and this is one of the questions I asked in the film. I said, are human incarnations voluntarily chosen? And the resounding answer from everybody that I spoke to, at least, was we're all here by choice. And we were very, Suzanne Giesman, Caroline Chang, a few people said it's this idea like we can't wait to get here. We are so excited to incarnate, especially at this time with the ascension that's happening, the raising of consciousness and all that, that there's a great demand for souls to participate. So again, I don't know if that number is exactly right, but I think it is congruent with the idea that that we're here by choice. And here's the other thing I'll say too, we're here by choice. Bobby
showed up.
We're here by choice, and we came with a purpose, guys. We're all here to accomplish something. Now, again, I don't want anybody to get freaked out. I don't know my purpose. Sometimes our purpose is as simple as being a wonderful parent or uncle or grandparent to a child who may have some major impact on the world. But the point is, many of us distract ourselves. We're not in alignment with why we're here. And so what I want to suggest, and hopefully what comes from the film, is now would be a great time to really choose, even if you don't know intellectually, in our heart, I think we know what our purpose is, and choose to pursue that, however you can. And sometimes there might be some false starts, but eventually you'll find your way. The best way, I think, for people to find their purpose is to offer yourself to the universe. How can I be of service? What's the highest use of my talents, of my skills, of my abilities? Direct me, lead me, guide me. And whether you believe in God, or whether you believe in a higher power or source, or maybe it's just your higher self, you will get that guidance once you offer yourself to the greater good.
I think too that, sometimes we get stuck thinking, oh, what's my purpose? And, sometimes I think is it really that important? Like you said, every day, just ask for guidance. Like, what can I do today? And I think sometimes our purpose is just to be a kind human being toward others on this earth. And so I think it's great if you feel like you're driven and you have a purpose, but if you don't feel that, I think it's perfectly fine as well. To just do your best every day to be the best person you can be. And when you screw up, which we all do, then you just try it again.
Yeah, I mean, that for me is self-love, self-forgiveness, self-compassion. That's a good purpose. That's a good way to live your life.
Which, by the way, I have to interrupt, Peter, because I have links, and you talked about that when we discussed your book in another episode. And then, of course, we've got a couple other episodes where you talked about your movie. So I'll have links to all of that in the description.
I'm going to grab a copy of my book.
Okay. All right. While he does that, somebody asked how you can share your near-death experience. And I will say that the best way, if you want to share it with me, is look for the email address in the description. And, you could write it all up. If you have a video of yourself sharing your story, that's really helpful to me. If you've ever shared it publicly before and you've got a link to that, that's always great. You can send me that. It's hard if somebody just says, I've got a great near-death experience, I want to share it, because then I'm going into something blind. And I also while you're legitimate, somebody else might reach out to me that is not legitimate. And so, I have to be very careful with who I bring on, and I need to be very discerning. But it really is helpful if I can hear it directly from you some way. Um, so that's really the best way. So, Peter, you were going to share your book?
Yeah, well, here's my book. If you haven't seen it, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. Overcoming Our Self-Imposed Limits to Have the Life We Want. Heather did an episode on the book, so if you're interested, you can check that out. But one of the things that came from me working on the book, again, was this idea of purpose, this idea of self-love, self-forgiveness, self-compassion, and the title of the book is Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. And that comes from this understanding, for me at least, that the only thing that's really holding me back in life are my thoughts and ideas about myself. All right. And like many people, I had kind of a negative self-image. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't see myself as valuable or worthy in many of my relationships. I struggled with standing up for myself. I struggled with asking for what I wanted or needed in relationships. I struggled with, again, seeing my own value and worth. And that created a lot of challenges in my life. So I cover all of that in the book. And how it relates to the film is, I think the main purpose or the main point, one of the main points I want to make in the film is that, we're not who we think we are. And I mean that at a couple different levels. At a very basic level, we're not these bodies. We're not these physical bodies that are running around, bumping into other bodies, fighting over resources with a limited lifespan, with this whole attitude of you got to get what you can get while you can get it. One of the core tenets from the film, and you've heard this many times now if you've watched any of Heather's episodes, is this idea that, life is eternal. And there's a difference between who we are and what we're doing in this life and walking around in these physical bodies that the body does die. But the main point of things like A Course in Miracles, of many of the interviews that you'll see on Heather's channel, is we're not our bodies, right? We have the body. That's something that we use to navigate the physical plane. But once that body's usefulness is done, we're out of here. And who and what we really are continues on unabated. Go ahead, Heather.
Oh, you can finish your thought. I just know there's a lot of people that are doing comments that I just wanted to start.
All right, let's jump in. Let's jump in. Let's answer some questions.
Okay. Well, here's one. And this is from Marie. My mother had a near-death experience and told the other side, no, I must go back and raise my children. I always hear people say how they were forced to come back. Certainly, there is a variety of things that happens, and some people definitely ask to come back. Other people don't necessarily want to come back, but it always seems that they're glad they did come back. And I think I don't know if it's so much that they're forced, and Peter, you can address this too. I think it's more so that we don't always know what's in our best interest. And then later, I mean, how many times in your life have you thought something was awful, and then after you're done, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. I've got a feeling it's more like that, where there's just a higher understanding of what is really truly for our best. And that's why people get sent back and they feel like they were forced.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I mean, my sense is this. So, and it gets kind of confusing, and it's a little difficult for us to really comprehend the afterlife while we're still here, working from our human consciousness. Specifically for that issue, my sense is this. We have a soul plan. And by the way, Rob Schwartz's work, Your Soul's Plan, his books are fabulous on this. We have a plan for our lives. It's more like a blueprint. It's not specific necessarily. There are some main points and whatnot that we hit, but part of that plan includes our exit points. And the exit point is when we leave this plane. And there's usually more than one, my understanding. And when somebody is told it's not your time, that's just going back to that person's own plan, right? To what they agreed to, what they wanted to accomplish while they were here. And when they're told that they have to go back, it's usually because they have not completed what they wanted to complete. And again, the part of us that makes these plans and lays the blueprint is the soul, is the higher self, which sees the bigger picture and knows all the timelines and knows all the players. And so we come in again with a specific purpose, something that we want to accomplish. And if we have not accomplished that, I think during the near-death experience, we're given the, let's just say, nudge to go back and complete it, to do what we came here to do. And again, if a great example of this is Peter Panagore. You know, Peter's story is he was ice climbing as in college, and he suffered hypothermia and had a near-death experience on an ice ledge in Canada. And during his, near-death experience, he had this amazing, transcendent, heavenly experience. And when he came back, he didn't want to be here, and he really, he said, I wanted to die. He wasn't suicidal. He said, but having seen what was on the other side, he really wanted to go back, right? And he lived that way for many, many years. And then in 2015, he had another near-death experience when he had a heart attack. And during his second near-death experience, he was given the option about whether or not to come back. And he came back to be with his granddaughter, his children, his wife, and so this is the guy who couldn't wait to leave. And now he's back there again, and he chooses to come back, right, to the physical. So, so that's all I'm going to say about that.
All right. By the way, Joe, you said the more I learn, the less I understand. And I see that all the time. There's so many fascinating aspects that every time I learn something, you just realize, oh my, there's just so much more out there for me to learn. And I think it's really great then to just keep that open mind so that we can keep learning. Somebody commented that Bubby is in the house. Yes. For those of you that love seeing Bubby, he is right here next to me now. And of course, you saw him a couple times on camera. I'm so glad you guys enjoy Bubby because I love having him here as a buddy. I also thank you for those of you that just are explaining to the other people that are asking about my audio. That is so my bad. I'm not good technically, and I did not put the right mic in when we started, and so that's why it's picking it up on my computer. So I will keep trying to talk loud. I hope that I'm not blocking this with my little iPad here where I'm looking at questions. But sorry about that. And I'm going to get it right one of these days. Somebody said they have a hard time believing in reincarnation. I'll address this and then I'll let you, Peter. I will just say that, that is something that I really was very, very iffy about before I started doing this podcast. And one of the things that surprised me the most was how many near-death experiencers talk about reincarnation. Now they don't. Not all of them do. Some come back and say they don't think there is, but the vast majority come back saying it. So I don't like to do absolutes anymore. So I think it's very likely. But I really don't like to say absolutes because there always could be other explanations for various things. Peter, what are your thoughts? I know you've talked to a lot of people about it as well.
Yeah, for me, it seems like I don't know how you could do all this in one lifetime. I mean, it's a lot to accomplish, a lot to experience in one lifetime. And kind of the whole reason we come here is for the experience of the limitation and the challenges. People, another one of the questions I asked in the film is that I say many people experience challenges while living in a body. Does the soul seek such challenges? And if so, why? And the general response that I got was that we come for the challenges because the challenges are the way that we get to know ourselves in our own experience as who and what we really are. And who and what we really are is this fractal, this piece of the divine, of all that is. We're Anita Moorjani, many of the people that you see in my film and on Heather's channel talk about this sense of when they leave their body, they suddenly experience a sense of limitlessness, right? And unity and power and this blissful ecstatic feeling. So we kind of squeeze ourselves down to fit into these little physical bodies to go and experience the challenges that we do. And part of that is for our soul's growth and evolution. Now, people say, well, the soul is already perfect. Why does it need to evolve and grow? And my answer is, it doesn't need to do anything, but it chooses to do that, again, to know itself in its own experience. Because Betty Guadagno in the film, she mentions this, a couple other people mention this. In heaven, it's all light and love and unconditional love, right? And eternity is a really long time, guys. You know, eternity is like forever. Eventually, you know, unconditional love, it's wonderful, it's amazing, but the only way we can experience that is in the absence of unconditional love. The only way to know ourselves as light is to have darkness in our experience. Neil Donald Walsh in the Conversations with God books talks about this extensively. He gives one of the best explanations that I've read. I can also recommend Meher Baba's book, God Speaks. He also talks about this. God wants to know itself in its own experience, and the only way to know itself as God is to experience itself as not God. All right? And you can, again, you don't like the word God, you can use the word source, whatever you want to use. And we are the way that source, that all that is, gets to experience itself, to know itself. In these, when we come into this incarnation and we forget the veil of forgetfulness, another question in the film, we forget who we are, why we're here. You know, that's all part of the plan, guys. And that's to make the experience meaningful. That's to make the experience real.
All right, let's go on. All right, so Professor Leo, thank you for commenting. And we'll get Bubby out of the way here. He said his question is, have either of you met an experiencer who did not have an overwhelming feeling of love when confronted with their divine contact? I will say that everybody that I have talked to has had an overwhelming feeling of love. Now, there were examples like Howard Storm where initially he didn't. Initially, he had a very hellish experience. And I know there are other people that have had hellish experiences. And so there's that. But in terms of the divine being, that seems like love. And then the aspect of, you know, what people experience in hellish experiences, that's a whole nother question. Peter, have you ever talked to many people that did not have a positive, loving entity that ultimately they met?
Maybe it's just me, but everybody that I met and talked to, you know, it was heaven, all out. You know, again, my understanding, and I've been working on this for a few years now, and obviously watching a lot of interviews, reading all kinds of books. You know, the initial experience that we have when we cross over is very much related to our consciousness, our state of mind, and I think Howard Storm's interview really plays this out. So be mindful of what thoughts you're harboring, what beliefs you have. You know, if you guys remember What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, you know, that was a good example of a hellish type of afterlife experience. But that, I think, one of the messages from that film and what I've learned from talking to people that I've talked to and studying this topic is that our consciousness really affects our experience on the other side, to the point where it's a very thought responsive environment. And so people, even if somebody has a negative experience, they will eventually, and it's usually pretty quick, I think, begin to recognize that it's the direction of their thinking that's directing their experience. And then the other thing is, we have help. You know, there are beings or our guides or, you know, family members who greet us and who will help us. So be conscious of the mindset that you carry every day. And especially if you're on, you know, if you have an impending potential passing, you know, be really, really, to the extent that you can, in a good place, mentally, psychologically, and emotionally.
You mentioned that we have people guiding us. Coming up next week, it's really interesting, my guest Judith, because she met with many guides. I think there was probably a dozen or something like that. But what she discovered is they all take turns coming to Earth, and then they guide the other one as they're at Earth. So I thought that was really interesting. By the way, Elizabeth, thank you so much. That is so kind of you. I really am grateful for all the support that you guys give me, whether it's something like this with Elizabeth or just always showing up week after week, all of that. I just am so grateful. Um, Steve, oh, well, first of all, Anne Marie wants to know if the film will be out in Europe. Is it something she can watch there?
I'm hoping eventually it'll be available around the world. So stay tuned. I'm still working on it, guys. I'm still editing. It's going to be like 6 hours. So it's going to be like a 3-part or a 5-part series when all is said and done. Just because I have so much great content.
Hopefully we'll see it on Netflix one of these days. Oh, in some sort of a series, that'd be great. So Steve W. was just commenting about reincarnation and just said, it makes sense in a just universe. God would not just give us a single chance with the odds so against most of us, and things take time. And that's what it always seems like too, is it's nice to get a few opportunities, because sometimes we mess things up and we just need to start over. Just like this, just like my technical issues here. Thank goodness this won't be my only live stream, my only lifetime here doing this, because I've yet to get this right. So I apologize again for the audio. And somebody asked if we're bodies in the afterlife or if we just are pulses of energy. I would say that my understanding, oh, my cats are in the background fighting, I'm leaning toward energy, but I do think that takes various forms, and sometimes people have very human-like things where they can definitely feel. Other people will just talk about, their orbs that they meet, but they recognize them as people that they've known. Peter, do you want to address that as well?
Well, the best example I can share with people is Tony Sikoria. His interview is on the website for the film and also on the film's YouTube channel. And he talks about, he was hit by lightning in 1994. He was at a family event in upstate New York, hit by lightning, leaves his body. And when he recognizes and finally realizes what's happening, he watches in real time as he goes from this form to a ball of energy. He literally says, by the time I got to the top of the stairs, I was a ball of energy. The body, the form was gone. Bill Tortorella, he talks about, this recognition that he was this energy consciousness. Many, my understanding is we have some kind of a form, but the higher we get in terms of our travels on the other side, in terms of dimensions and vibration, the less there's any recognizable form. It seems to be that we recognize each other by our vibration and by our frequency. There's like a signature that we each have. It's not by a visual reference in any way. So I think ultimately that's, we end up back in our natural state. Course in Miracles says, I am spirit. That's our natural form, is this spirit form, which I guess we could equate with energy.
Juan says, even if you don't know your purpose in this life, does facing your fears help in some way? I understand so far that those fears follow us to the next life. Example, fear of dark, fear of bugs, etc. And I don't know. I have no idea if they would follow us in another life. And there's probably varying opinions on that. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Peter.
Well, again, I think my understanding, and I would definitely recommend Rob Schwartz's books, Your Soul's Journey, Your Soul's Plan, several books. And he talks of, we plan our lives, and we typically will want to address the things that we didn't address in a prior lifetime. I'll just talk from my own experience. And again, it's all in my book, actually. This whole idea of being bigger than I think I am was me facing my fears. Right. The only reason I'm making this movie today is because I face my fears. It's like your fears are there to guide you and tell. My own personal belief is, those fears, the fear is telling you what you need to work on. Right. And the message for me, at least behind the fear, is you got this. You can do this. This would not be coming up in your life right now if you didn't have the ability to transcend it. But we talk ourselves out of things, I believe, I say this on the website for the book, most of us talk ourselves out of greatness, at least 25 times a day. We completely and totally talk ourselves out of our skills, our abilities, and fear. Listen, fear is a very real thing. Life is hard, guys. I'm not here to say life is not hard. Life is tragic, actually, in many ways, and a lot of people suffer. And I don't ever, ever, ever want anybody to interpret anything that I say in any way diminishing anybody's experience here. All right. Whatever you're feeling, totally okay. Whatever struggles you have, I'm sorry that you're suffering. I'm sorry that you're struggling. I know what that's like. In the middle of making this movie, I lost my younger brother, and it threw my life into such a despondent, depressed, sad thing. So I'm not telling anybody not to feel the way you feel. It's okay, whatever you're experiencing. I'm not here to say, life is easy and just get over it or whatever. And I don't think that we're ever given anything that we're not able to handle ultimately. Right. And I think it involves facing our fears. It involves doing things differently. It involves changing. My whole book is about reprogramming our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, and that includes the things that we think we're afraid of. Now, there is a difference between fear and caution. Okay. And again, I talk about this in my book. We want to use caution. You want to look both ways before you step off the street, off the curb, but fear has usually got some irrationality to it. It's some kind of heightened thing that's usually not grounded in reality. So I'll stop there.
Andrew says, apparently my soul plan is to work 60 hours a week and pass out from exhaustion every night. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people feel that way. And maybe that is part of your plan, but maybe too, it's tough. Life is hard, and it can often be hard in what direction that we need to go in.
Andrew, you want to read my book?
Yeah. Anne Marie says, I wish, it sounds like she's saying that she wishes that, there would be a program on TV with this. But, you've got YouTube, and YouTube is worldwide. So hopefully that's helpful. And of course, if you go to, the internet and Peter's website, you can watch his as well. Let's see. Somebody else is saying, and this is Joe, it's unfortunate that we don't really know what the purpose is, but the NDEs told that we all came to do something specific. I think that you were saying this earlier, Peter, that specific could be something very simple. You often hear stories about somebody who comes to life just for one moment because that was playing an important role in somebody else's life, and it taught somebody else something. So, we maybe don't know how important some of the small things that we do really are very significant, and probably some of the most significant things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also add two things. Number one is, just because it's your purpose doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So I will tell you guys right now, I feel like for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm really on purpose with this film. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done. All right. I've been working on it for 2.5 years. I can't tell you how many challenges there have been along the way, but I also get that, this is the second thing I want to say. Daryl Anka is in the film. Daryl channels Bashar. Anybody who knows Bashar, there is a formula, right? And very simply, one of the ways to discover your purpose is, follow your bliss. What is it that you love to do? What is it that's really important to you? Now, not everybody has to turn their purpose into a career, right? You can do it. You can work a day job and then follow your purpose at night or weekends or whatever. But until people at least will acknowledge that I did come here to accomplish something and I do have a purpose, most people will never even look for that. And they'll just complain about how hard their life is and how much they hate their job. So we do have to take a certain level of personal responsibility, I feel, in all of this. And part of that is being willing to pursue a purpose. And sometimes you get it wrong. I did a lot of things in my life that I thought was my purpose. Turned out it wasn't. But every one of those things prepared me for what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and that purpose I always think of as evolving, because clearly I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, if this is my purpose, 2 decades ago. But what I was doing then was also important, and my purpose at that time, might have been raising my kids. My other job that I had as a meteorologist. Um, maybe sometimes I think my purpose is just to, make people, hopefully their life a little bit better here and there, and hopefully I think that's something we all can do. But I do think our purpose is something that's always evolving, and we don't have to say this is my purpose. It's always like, what you're doing now is your purpose at this moment, but that might change 10 years from now to something very different.
And I would add too, being a parent is a very noble purpose, guys. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not a parent, as far as I'm concerned, parenting is the toughest job on the planet. So if you do that well in any way, my hat's off to you. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, impacting other people's lives like that. Very, very important.
Elizabeth says, and thank you again, Elizabeth. Elizabeth says, my mother told me that when I was born that I had a very worried look on my face. Maybe I was thinking, what did I get myself into? I have to tell you this. So we just yesterday, we picked up a little puppy that we are fostering. And more than once since yesterday at this time, I said, what did I get myself into? She's a little handful, but she's a cutie.
Well, listen, there's a couple of stories. Christian Sundberg, his story. If you know Christian's story, he bailed on his first incarnation. I mean, a couple of people I talked to, they said, I think it might be Christine Dallahan from the film. She was talking about the fact that she was really late. She was like 4 weeks late being born, or 2 weeks late, or something like that. And she found out later it was because she didn't want to come, once she realized what she was getting into. So, yeah, so that happens.
And I will say too, and I said this on the last live stream, is I had Christian on my show, Christian Sundberg, and I think he was one of my most fascinating guests, and he didn't get a lot of views. So if you have not watched Christian yet, his story is fascinating. And not only that, just his knowledge is just incredible. And he's actually going to come back for a Q&A. It's not going to be until we've actually booked the interview in November. So probably November, December is when he'll actually show up on the air for you. But really, I encourage you to watch that with Christian. All right, let's see.
He's a beautiful guy too. He's just a really beautiful human being.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Somebody's asking if Anne Marie has encountered Pim von Lommel's work. And let's see. Somebody's interested in ancient history of near-death experiences and how religion may have been influenced by visions and miracles. Is it Muniz? Is that how you say your name? That actually would be really interesting. If you know of somebody, that would be really interesting to talk to, because probably not all historians are interesting to talk to. But that would be really a really interesting guest, I think, to have somebody on just talking about some of the early near-death experiences in history. In fact, I'm just going to jot that down. Sorry, I'm jotting it down.
Yeah, I know there have been a couple of people drawing from the Bible and trying to equate some of the experiences. I'm not familiar with the Bible, but ancient texts. Some of the modern NDE researchers are making analogies to say maybe that was an NDE that happened. It's described in that ancient text. So somebody's looking at that, not me.
And Rhonda says, Peter, your explanation seems sound and legit, probably the best explanation I've heard so far, but I don't think we're supposed to know the absolute answer until we pass over. Now, you've said a lot of great things, so I'm not sure which one that is referring to. But thank you, Rhonda. Craig, hi, Craig. Good to hear from you. Craig says, I recall that PMH Atwater, sorry, that was a mouthful, she's a very famous, well-known researcher, encountered 4 persons in a hospital who had hellish experiences. Apparently, all of them had deeply held feelings of guilt and shame. And I will say that the people that I've heard that have had hellish experiences, one thing I've noticed too is that many of them describe themselves as very arrogant. Peter, do you have any thoughts on people with guilt and shame? I've heard that too, that sometimes, we bring on what we expect.
That happens in this life. You don't have to die to have that experience, guys. We create our own realities through the quality of our thoughts, of our, again, I talk about this a lot in the book, but you can study law of attraction. You can, all that stuff that's out there talks about vibration, right? So if you're in a very low vibrational state, which is what guilt and shame, that's among the lowest vibrational states, you're going to attract more of that. And it happens faster in the afterlife, which is why we can adjust quicker. Here, there's a time delay. Excuse me. So it could be days, months, or weeks before we experience the effects of our thoughts. But it's all an attraction-based universe and resonance. The law of resonance. Whatever level we're vibrating at on our frequency, we're going to get more of that. And the easiest way to know what your vibration is how are you feeling? How do you feel? That's our primary way of vibrating in this everywhere, actually.
And here's just a little bit of a challenge to that. And again, I do not know the answer. So these are just thoughts that come in my mind, is that a lot of people feel guilt and shame, not because they actually did something wrong, but a lot of that was drummed into them as children. And we do have this loving creator. So I don't think a loving creator is just going to be like, you got the wrong feelings, you're going to stay down there at this lower vibration. And I don't even think that higher being would always allow us to hold ourselves away from that love if we haven't figured it all out yet. I think though that for a lot of us, we maybe are gently taught to kind of bring us back in if we don't think we're ready, if we hold ourselves out. But I also think there are probably a lot of people with guilt and shame that, boom, they make it right up into the good stuff. And so I just don't want anybody to think that, they won't experience that because of their guilt and shame, especially when I think of so many people that have it and they shouldn't have that guilt and shame because they didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 200%. And I will say this, I think we have all kinds of help, guys. There are beings, I'm just going to say beings out there that are beaming us love and support and encouragement, whether it's our own soul family, our spirit guides, our guardian angels, our higher self, or perhaps extra dimensional beings, extraterrestrial beings. There's a lot invested in our experience here. The thing is this, though, we have free will, we have agency, we have sovereignty. So ultimately, we have to choose, I believe, this is my own personal take on this, we have to choose if we want to have that higher, that higher experience. Nobody's made wrong. Again, maybe I wasn't clear. I don't think anybody's punished or made wrong for holding lower vibration thoughts. It's not about being punished. It's just the nature of reality, I think, is this law of resonance, this law of attraction. So, but again, that's the good news, right? Because we're in charge. A lot of what my book is about is reprogramming all those negative thoughts and beliefs, which is shame, guilt, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. So I know I keep talking about my book, but this was my transformation. The only reason I'm sitting here right now, guys, I had 22 years in 12-step programs because of addictions. My life was a mess, man. I was. So if I can change, any of you guys can change too, I believe.
And I will say I loved your book. I got the audiobook and I loved it. And I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to talk loudly, but I loved your book. All right. So, do you believe we can always improve and do more loving actions to a higher degree to an endlessness? I think so. I think we can always do better. Your thoughts on that, Peter? Can we always do better?
Well, so I was just, yeah, I mean, that's what I was kind of referring to
Yeah.
a minute ago.
What is what's Kellen's Flukiger's notice and choose? He always says every now and then make an assessment, notice what you're doing, and choose to just notch it up a little bit, no matter what you're doing. And I always thought that was really helpful. All right, and thank you, John, for that. M. Muniz.
And don't try to do it alone, guys. You know, this is also, again, I come from 12 steps, but there's a lot of places will say, you know, if you have a challenge, find somebody to help you with it. And sometimes, you know, for me, it was having like an action partner when I started my photography business and got into filmmaking. Have somebody that's a buddy, don't try to do all this alone, right? It's very, very difficult to change your mind about yourself alone. It really helps to have somebody to support you in that. And partners, it doesn't have to be a therapist, although therapists are great. But just some kind of a partner, you both want to make some changes, you know, support each other. Find a way to surround yourself with like-minded people.
All right. So M. Muniz says, the big love is why we didn't want to come back. I'm sure that is it. Absolutely. The secret behind the curtain is that we're all experiencing our own cartoon here. This life is just ashes and dust when viewed from there. And I do think that, you know, we think life, sometimes we make like something so huge into a big problem when it's something very small. And I think the view from above is often us when we're watching a toddler having a temper tantrum. You know, sometimes they're really happy and sometimes they're having a temper tantrum, but they think something small is so big. And I'm sure there's some amusement watching me in my life and some of the things that I've been doing here while I'm on Earth.
So one of the questions I asked in the film is life in the physical plane an illusion? And so this is what I would say. Yes, I totally agree with this idea that life is ashes and dust, the physical experience, but it doesn't mean that it's not important, if that makes sense. We come here, again, for the experience, and it's the only place that we can have that experience. The analogy I like to use is in heaven, we read the book on how to ride the bicycle. In the earth plane, not only do we ride the bicycle, but we fall off the bicycle, we scrape our knees, and our friends are all laughing at us. So we come here for the experience. So it is valuable to our soul. It is part of our soul's journey. So yes, ultimately, this is kind of an illusion here, but it does serve a purpose, an important purpose.
And Steve is replying to something we talked about earlier, and he's saying even the physical body is just energy in the final analysis. You know, there are many forms of energy, more and more subtle, and that's true. I mean, we are made up of atoms, and there's a lot more actually space within us than there is actually, substance. So that's a really good point, Steve. Craig says, is just pointing out that an interesting read is The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. Let's see, Andrew said, Andrew asks, I've heard that there is no time on the other side. How do we reconcile that with the passage of time on Earth versus the other side? Peter, maybe you have the answer to this, but I have asked so many of my guests to try to explain time versus timelessness, and I cannot grasp it at all. Do you have a sense of some of that?
So this is how far gone I am. So when I embarked on all this, I started studying things like Einstein's general theory of relativity, the special theory of relativity, quantum physics. You don't have to go to the afterlife or any of that to discover that time is not what we think it is, right? It's very, even in the physical, it's very malleable. Many say it's just a mental construct that we have. In the film, Daryl Anka says, you know, in terms of reincarnation and more than one lifetime, he says, and I hear this a lot, there are no past lives or future lives. All our lives are happening right now in this moment. We're just focused in on one particular life experience. And so, Andrew, all I can say is, again, they do talk about time being very different on the other side, but you don't have to go to the other side to understand that. Quantum physics and the special theory of relativity will tell you that time is relative, depending on where you are, how fast you're moving, all of that. So time is not what we think it is.
But even in studying it, it's just something, it's a concept I can't grasp, to try to actually understand it. It's one thing to kind of read about it and, have a visual, but to try to really grasp it, I think is a very challenging thing. So it's probably easier for you. That probably has a lot to do with my, the tech issues and things I have here, that's a concept that's hard because I keep thinking if everything happens at once, it would be over at once. But I think there's this sense of stepping out of time that I haven't been able to grasp yet. So, all right. And Rhonda says, facing your fears is huge. It has totally freed me from being trapped by anxiety. It is so freeing. So definitely agreeing with you, Peter, on that. Logan says, is God in us as us since there's only one? Is God in us as us?
I think, so I'll jump in. I'll say this. One of the great themes that came out of the film that I've seen everywhere for years in other teachings is this idea of oneness and unity, this idea that we're all connected. We're not all necessarily the same. There is still some individuation of the whole, but it's like we're all leaves on the same tree. We're all fingers on the same hand. We have that connection, that oneness, and the sum total of all of that is what many people would call God or source or all that is. So why is that important? Well, one of the things that I talk about, there's another website I'd like to point you guys to. It's a nonprofit website. It's related to the film. It's called itstimetoremember.org. If you go to the film website, you'll see at the bottom, there's a link. Itstimetoremember.org talks about these 7 core concepts that come from the film. And one of them is this idea that we're all one. All right. Now, some people kind of bristle at that. I don't want to be one with a terrorist or one with a reptilian, or whatever. And I get that. But it's not the human consciousness. Again, it's not this limited, individuated self that is at the effect of the world. All right. We're talking about at a higher level. And many of the people, when they cross over, Anita Moorjani, a guy, Paul Arand, is in the film, a bunch of people from the film, they all talk about, in fact, most of the NDE interviews that I've seen or read talk about this at some point experiencing this overwhelming sense of oneness, of unity with everything. And so it's very difficult for us in our egoic minds to make sense of that, but that seems to be the underlying nature of things. It's not apparent to us here, but if you read A Course in Miracles, one of the big teachings of the Course is that it's this sense of separation that is the whole basis for this illusion and for this experience. And when we can transcend that sense of separation, we have a whole different experience of the world.
Yeah, it's very hard sometimes to understand that we're all one, but you hear it over and over again from people that have been to the other side and how we need to live more that way here on Earth. Somebody was just agreeing that you're so right, Peter. It's been very hard to stop living in fear and responding to life with fear. I think that you are definitely not alone. Somebody's asking, John Lopez, do you think we'll have a utopia here materially within the next 1,000 years? What do you think, Peter?
Well, I don't think we have to wait 1,000 years. I do think it's coming. I do think that there is this whole idea of an ascension, this whole idea of moving from 3D to 5D. It seems to be a real thing, for the best I could tell. And it's very promising. It promises a whole different experience of the world and of our physical lives. And I don't think we have to wait 1,000 years, but it all depends on us. To the extent we can choose love, we can choose compassion, we can choose understanding, we can choose, many of the spiritual ideals that our religions teach us. that can hasten this transformation, but it's up to each one of us. And so, if I watch the news, which I haven't watched the news in 20 years, but if I get plugged into the divisiveness and it's us against them and we have to, fight to survive, it's going to be very difficult to create any kind of utopia. But if we can begin to put that aside and look at bigger spiritual principles, the longest chapter in my book is on forgiveness. And that seems to be one of my soul's lessons in this lifetime is forgiveness. That's a very powerful way to change our experience of the world. And I don't think we have to wait 1,000 years, you may have to go against the norm and not everybody's going to agree with you. And it may be challenging and difficult, but if enough people really embrace this idea of oneness, of unity, of fairness, of tolerance, of compassion, the earth can change very, very quickly, I believe.
And we always have to remember too that compassion extends to all sides. Some people think, well, those people aren't being compassionate, but I'm being compassionate. Well, you got to even be compassionate to people you don't think are being compassionate. So, there's just so much to that, and we all have to kind of work on it. I think one of the keys for me is trying to at least understand. So I don't have to agree with someone, but sometimes, and they don't have to agree with me, but maybe I can just understand why they may come to the conclusions that they come to, because we all have different life circumstances, which bring us to where we are. All right, let's see. Somebody else just says, I think we could get there as well. That's Elizabeth. Thanks, Elizabeth. Somebody's asking, will the recording of this be on YouTube later because it came in late? Absolutely. It will be there later, and you will notice well, I'll be apologizing for delays and apologizing for audio and all of that good stuff. Let's see. Somebody just says, yeah, I think there's more recordings. Yeah, there are a couple of lives I've already done. And again, on both of those, I had tech issues too. So you guys should start placing bets. Like, how many lives does Heather have to do before she will have no tech issues? Will that come within 1,000 years? We'll see. All right. Rhonda says, let's see. I love where your purpose is right now, Heather. You've helped so many people by doing this podcast. Thank you, Rhonda. And I will tell you, I could not be doing this without all of you. I'm so grateful for all of you that are so loyal, and you come back week after week, and you put up with all of my little stumbles and falls, and you guys are just so wonderful. I'm so grateful. Truly, you do not know how grateful I am, and I would not be doing this without you. So thank you so much. And by the way, we just reached 70,000 subscribers. So slowly but surely, it's climbing. So thank you to all of you. I really appreciate that. All right. And somebody, Emery, again says, I think that you can have many different purposes also at different times in your life. And that's what we talked about earlier, that I do think that that is always evolving. Yeah, totally agree with that. All right. Elizabeth, do you think our purpose in life can change during your lifetime? Oh, we just answered that. Yeah, I do. Because definitely at some point in my life earlier, it was, being a mom to my little kids. I think sometimes my purpose was getting over challenging hurdles in my life. So it might not have had a lot of meaning to the rest of the world in any way, but I think, they were challenges within here. So, yeah, our purpose definitely changes over time. And sometimes, we're more capable in our life to have our purpose include lots of people in terms of helping other people. And sometimes our purpose is just getting through the day, taking a shower, and brushing your teeth. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people that have had days like that. All right, let's see. God knew we humans needed help, so he made us cats and dogs. Yes, angels without wings. Yes, that is so true. I tell you, animals have been such a big part of my life. And when I remember as a kid, when I was sad, I would just sit with my cat. And, I just think they bring so much joy in our life. And let me tell you just a quick side note, unrelated to this, but So on a sad note, I lost my dog Charlie recently. And so I just told you we were fostering a new puppy that we just got yesterday. But while I was just kind of looking online, for different dogs, because I I I always feel it's so hard to lose a pet and there's such a hole in our hearts, but also there's so many animals that need a home. So, that's why I felt it was important to go out and find a dog that we could help out and also bring some joy into our life. But I have to tell you, there were so many animals in these shelters, and so many of them had like urgent putting down tomorrow if somebody doesn't adopt. And I saw that over and over and over again. So I'm such a big encourager, everybody, to adopt your animals and spay and neuter. The shelter, they said the dog that I got was just dumped off on the street. I don't know. I cannot fathom why somebody would do that, but it all starts with getting them spayed and neuter. And so sorry, that's my little plea there for all of you. I appreciate all of you that are animal lovers. Anne Marie says Christian Sundberg is great. I got his book. I got his book too. It is wonderful.
A walk in the physical.
Yeah, walk in the physical. And what I love too is there's a lot of Q&A in it. And that's what we're going to go over when I have him on next, is just answering the so many questions. And he's got such great insight to be able to answer a lot of questions that you will have. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and again, Craig is talking about, yeah, Craig, I know you have cats, and you're just talking about how marvelous they are as companions and co-travelers through this realm. And oh, somebody's saying, Joe, thank you. That Christian's interview here on this channel was very engaging. I'm telling you, he was so fascinating. So please, everybody, watch that if you haven't. I will put a link in the description, so I'll try to remember to do that. And again, just thanking Craig, and cheers to you for the animal comment. So Craig is saying a good study of earlier and not ancient, but 1800s to 1900s NDEs and SDEs, the study and practice of astral projection by Robert Crookall. Thank you very much. That is always helpful to get suggestions and names and things like that, resources. Rhonda says, Heather, my comment to Peter referred to the reincarnation. Thank you for clarifying that. I kind of thought that's what it was about. Craig says, for what it's worth, the David Hawkins emotional scale has guilt and shame at the very lowest end of the scale. Yeah, for sure.
I think they're like a 20. Guilt is like or shame is like a 20 out of a 700, I think, scale it is.
Yeah, it just
or
eats
1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also on talking about Atwater, PMH Atwater, from her distillation of maybe 4,000 experience, said that they almost all eventually said, I got what I needed. And I've heard that too. Even people that have told me they've talked to people that have had negative near-death experiences, they all gained something positive. So I have really personally not heard of anybody that had a negative one and it did not turn positive in some way.
I think that's true in life too. Again, if we have a challenge in our lives, it's what we make of it, guys. And listen, I spent most of my life feeling victimized by the challenges in my life. But when I started to embrace them and say, okay, I'm not being punished. I'm being given an opportunity to transcend something and start using those experiences for a positive purpose, it changes everything. I still have my days. I had a computer issue a couple of days ago. I was going to kill somebody. So, but I think overall, if we can begin to transform that mentality to this is not happening, and this is so trite at this point because everybody says it, but this is not happening to me, it's happening for me. What's the gift in this experience? How can this move me forward? Ultimately, I believe it will.
And Peter, this is a question for you in light of what you're just talking about in your book and your life experiences. What advice would you give to someone that has been through a highly traumatic event that is preventing them from moving forward in life? I'm so sorry.
I think listen, again, I'm not a therapist, and this is just my own personal take on that. It's really, really, really important to have your feelings, right? And it seems like there is you talk about darkness. You know, it seems like there is just horrible stuff that happens in this world. A lot of it that we're going to find out, I think, in the coming, weeks, months, and years, at very high levels of society and politics and all of that. But just in your own family, maybe you have some trauma from that. Have your feelings, allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to feel whatever you need to feel. Don't ever for a minute, just because we talk about the idea that the soul plans an incarnation does not mean that you, the human being, chose that abuse or that trauma or anything like that. All right, I want to be really clear about that. This is not to blame anybody for their life, their incarnational experiences. All right. But again, from the soul's perspective, which is a much higher perspective, none of this is ultimately a problem for the soul. We heal from all of this eventually. We are repaired, we're made whole, we're complete. And so learn what you can from the experience. Don't blame yourself for what happened to you. And try not to blame anybody else. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Again, I talk a lot in my book about having healthy boundaries. So I don't put myself in those harmful situations anymore. It's very hard to heal if you're still in a hostile environment. So do what you need to do to take care of yourself there. And then recognize that at some level, this is an opportunity for you as a soul to make progress in a certain area. We talk about forgiveness, but forgiveness does not mean we're not condoning somebody else's inappropriate behavior. We're not saying it's okay that you were abused or traumatized. It's not what that's about. And there is some lesson or benefit in that experience for you, I believe, at the soul level.
Yes, and sometimes too, it's hard to reach out and ask for help, but there are professionals and services that probably would be very helpful. I think sometimes when people have traumatic childhood experiences, they get a running loop in their brain of some of the things that were told to them, and then they take it over, instead of having somebody else beat them up mentally, they beat themselves up mentally. So I do think there are resources for that, and sometimes think out of the box. I consider that PTSD. I think there are some very interesting treatments out there that are just coming to light, and I think look into things, because don't try to do everything on your own. That can be really challenging as well. Okay, let's see. Oh, and just thank you so much. People are sending love to one another. Thank you so much. And Rhonda says, I saw the podcast, Peter. The way you began your photography business was a great example of changing your mindset. And of course, we talked about that just a few weeks ago when you were on the show. Actually, did you talk about that? Yes, you did in the last. I'm trying to remember because we've done a few episodes together. But yeah, that was the episode that you shared that. So
the book there. So the book website, the book has its own website. It's bebiggertoday.com. And on the book website, there's all kinds of material. There's 90 hours of free videos from an online workshop that I did during the pandemic. I took a whole group through the book with 60 weeks, an hour and a half every week, and it's all up there. It's for free. The book is set up as a workbook. So at the end of each chapter, there are exercises to do. And it's all about transforming our mindset, transforming who we think we are.
I have to say this too, Peter, because not a lot of people, I know most of you listening, this isn't the case, but sometimes people will be critical because somebody wrote a book or you did a movie. But I've been so impressed with how generous you've been, to share all of your interviews online for free, to have all the materials that you've shared for free with people. I just think that's really admirable. And I hope everybody recognize how generous you are with everything that you are doing. So.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Thank you. I mean, that's what makes sense to me. Other people have a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
I don't have any subscriptions. I don't have any plans that, or any of that. That's just the way I do it. and
Yeah, and I'll say
I'm paying.
something. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and I'm financing the entire film myself. So eventually I got to make my money back, but I just trust that it's all going to work out.
Yeah, and I will say this. I this might be controversial to some, but I don't really have a problem if somebody would make money in a book. But I will tell you this: rarely does anybody make money on these near-death experience books. I actually published a coloring book years ago, and I spent far more than I ever gained. And same with this podcast. I've spent far more than I've gained. But boy, if it ever took off and I made something, I would be thrilled. And so I never fault anybody for that, because you have to remember that people are doing a lot of things that you don't know about. Peter, you've done so much, and I keep turning these out no matter what. So that's how it is. Okay, let's see. Craig is saying, I was talking about a Zoom group that you formed, Craig, that you meet on Sundays. I think that's really neat. I always feel like this is a community that we have put together here, and I love when people connect, and I notice how people connect in the comments, and it's really special. Let's see. Emery says, yes, Heather, apart from notice and choose, think this is how you love. And again, that was from my guest that's currently on this week, David McGinley. And he said, in every action that you do, think this is how I love. So if you're yelling at the clerk, or if your dog or your kid, or you're just getting frustrated with somebody at work or whatever, is that your best foot forward, or is this how you're showing love? I mean, can you do it better? And I think when you think this is how I love, it opens your eyes to, oh, I should be doing a better job. All right, let's see.
I could be doing a better job. There's no shoulds.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Elizabeth said, do your best, let God do the rest. And that was from Tanya Upton, and she was from last week. So Tanya Upton, another excellent one, as I mentioned, David McGinley, both really great. And yes, she said, do your best. Oops. I just lost. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I have a storm, and it's just.
I heard the storm, yeah.
Hold on, let me unplug this. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I have a storm, and it just took out my microphone. It's gone. So anyway, so hopefully it won't do anything else. But if you do hear the noise in the background, there is a thunderstorm going on right now. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so Heather and Peter, I just woke up in Australia, and I will catch the replay. I can't wait. Lara, thank you. You've been such a wonderful viewer. I've so loved connecting with you. So thank you so much. Craig is talking about Anne Marie.
The David Hawkins
Yeah.
scale, some people love it, some people don't. It's helpful, but I don't think it's ultimately the be all and end all.
Anne Marie said, I had a dream that came true 3 weeks ago. How is this possible? I thought we had free will. I think we have a mixture, don't you, Peter? I think there are some things that are probably predetermined in our life, and other things, it's our free will.
So this, again, we asked this question in the film, what's the role of free will in a given incarnation? And we talk about the soul planning and all of that. Here's the one thing I know. We always have free will when it comes to how we respond to anything that seems to be happening in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
That's a good
point.
point.
That's never pre-planned. And that's where the growth happens, when we choose something different. In that moment, when we choose love instead of fear, compassion instead of anger, that's free will, guys. All right. And so I do believe we have a blueprint for our life plan that we want to accomplish, things we want to accomplish. We do select things like our parents ahead of time. We select our spouse, our children. But the way we respond to all of that in the moment is free will. And that's the opportunity. That's why we came, to have that opportunity to be bigger than we think we are, to overcome our negative thoughts and beliefs, to move past our fear to love.
And then people are just going back and forth about dreams and prophetic dreams, and kind of having a mini discussion on that. Some people definitely have a gift, I think, in getting information coming to them again. So there is some things that appear to be predetermined, and yet at the same time, everybody says these are likely possibilities, but we have the ability to change them, which is important, why we keep a very positive mindset. Let's see. It feels really weird without wearing my earphones here. Sorry, in my voice as I go, I can tell I'm trying to talk loud. It's probably getting more hoarse. Is it Zena? Zena says heaven can be brought to earth just by the steps taken closer to God, to source. Agree. Yeah, I'm sorry. Somebody's mentioned the audio again. That is so my bad. I set the, I'm not a tech wizard, and I set this up wrong. And so one of these years, I'm going to get every technical thing right. But yeah, I apologize. That is me. That was my setting it up wrong. And congratulations on the 70,000. Thank you so much, Anne Marie. And thank you, Craig, for that. I appreciate it. Juan says, if all lives are happening at once, then there is no reincarnation, but many presents at once. So when someone sees a past life, isn't really a past life. It's not really a past life, but the present for that experience. That's also complex, right, Peter?
Yeah, don't try to figure it out. If you're comfortable with past lives and future lives and all that, that's fine. I don't think it's comprehensible to the human mind, right? It's only when we move past this consciousness to a higher plane, higher consciousness, that it all makes sense. And not only it makes sense, it becomes obvious. Oh, that's how it was all along. We just couldn't see that from our limited perspective here.
And Lynn, I'm going to agree with you 100%, because Lynn says it breaks my brain. And, there are so many things that the concepts are really hard to understand. And I always liken that to the fact that our brains can only handle human things. And we can try to understand what is beyond this life, but we are limited by our brains to the concepts. I mean, what is beyond us is utterly beyond what any human being can truly understand. And as you said earlier, Peter, we'll find out more when we actually cross over.
Well, and some people achieve this during their lifetime in meditation or in contemplation. I mean, there are ways to expand our consciousness while we're still here. We don't have to wait to cross over to, I mean, there are many, many, many mystics and all of that who have, otherworldly experiences, and they're still essentially here in this incarnation.
And then somebody again, more questions on past lives, then how do kids remember past lives? And I think you're talking about if it all happens at the same time. There are just so many complexities to all of this, as I think that we're trying to get across. I mean, anything else you wanted to add to that, Peter? No. Okay. All right. Let's see. And again, another comment from Steve: past, present, future are real in the physical. They become less real the less physical experience becomes. Thank you, Craig. Craig says, sorry about my loss of Charlie. She was such a sweet girl. Oh, and I know I'll see her again, but it's really hard not to have her in my life because she was a doll. So thank you, Craig. Juan's trying to come up with good questions. Thank you, Juan. Rhonda, I believe our beloved pets will be with us in the afterlife. I love the podcast that you had about pets that we love. I know. I adore my pets. It's been a quite the year for me. I've lost a few cats as well, but that's what happens. They get older, and I always say though they do something unselfish when they leave because they open up a place for another animal. And there's so many animals, as I said, that need homes. And so I hope all of you that have lost pets will keep opening your homes to new ones. Um, let's see. Let's see. Embrace the challenges. Yes, it's how we grow and learn. I don't always embrace them, even though I should. So that's great advice, though. It's so true. And Craig, thank you for your empathy about my computer and tech issues. It says that they have driven both your wife and yourself in screaming fits. Yeah, I think a lot of us encounter tech issues, and I encounter even more. I I do have brain qualities for other things, but technology is not always there. But it's very complex. Some of the trying to put this all together with a guest, there's just a lot of complexities to putting it all together. So it's not quite as simple as it seems. At least I thought so. Let's see. Just thank you for doing this interview. You're welcome. It's been great having Peter, right? And then Kevin's just saying hello. Everybody's just saying hi. Yeah, and somebody's saying we all need money to support ourselves and family. No shame in that. And that's one thing I say. If somebody, so they had a near-death experience, and so now maybe they say, okay, I'm going to be a counselor and help people. And then I've heard people say, well, they should give it away for free. And I think, well, would you rather have them get a different job then because they have to earn a living? They've got families, they got to buy groceries, they got to pay their bills. So yeah, they could just not do it if that's what you prefer, by earning a living some other way. But instead, and isn't it what a gift to be able to do what you love and have that be how you earn a living, how you pay your bills, how you raise money for your kids, for whatever, your schooling, anything. Let's see. Oh, you can hear me despite the thunder. Thank you. You can hear me better now. Maybe that's because the mic shorted out. Let's see. Rats to thunderstorms, the great equalizer as far as tech. Yes. And Anne Marie is saying, thank you, Heather and Peter, for all your work and the time you spend on this. Really appreciate all that you do for us. Thank you for the Q&A. I have to go to bed soon. Good night, Anne Marie. I appreciate you watching us from overseas. Ronald says, why do you think God doesn't make A and then he didn't finish? So I'm not sure.
Down, his comment continues below.
Oh, okay.
Why do you think God doesn't make life more understandable? We have to figure it out which religion is correct or not. Why so vague and us trying to figure it out? Well, again, I think for me, Ronald, and I can only speak for myself, is, the gift is us discovering our own capabilities, our own abilities, our own gifts, our own talents, and utilizing what we've been given by the Creator. The other thing is, I think, we get to write our own plan, whether it's before incarnation or during the incarnation. So if God was always telling us what to do and how to do it, eventually we would end up resenting that God, right? Because we want to be able to experience our liberty, our freedoms. And the problem with that is that, we have to be responsible for when things don't work out. As far as religions and understanding religions and all that, I think one of the trends that we're going to see now, especially as we move to this higher level of consciousness on the planet, we will be looking outside ourselves less for our answers. And that's one of the things that I try to encourage in the film. Again, go within. All the answers that you need, I believe, are within us, right? But you got to make the time to do it. I spend at least a half hour every morning doing my meditation and another 15, 20 minutes at night. Plus, I spend most of my day, whenever I can, listening to spiritually uplifting material, empowering material, educational. I'm always, always, always trying to raise my consciousness, right? And so that's our responsibility. Nobody can do that for us. So that means I don't watch certain things on the internet or social media, or at least I'm conscious of when I spend time doing those other things. So, you know, if you believe that you have the answers within you, then it doesn't matter what religion says or doesn't say.
I also think that one thing to consider when it comes to religion, many of us were taught what we believe was taught by somebody else, and somebody else taught them, and somebody else taught them. And remember, these are all flawed humans that are teaching us. So I think that we really have to examine the things that we've been taught. And just an easy way to illustrate how people interpret things differently is, did you know that around the globe there are 40,000 Christian denominations? So even in that one religion, there are 40,000 different groups that believe something a little bit differently, or have, different rituals. So I really think that we have to really look at um, it more closely, and not just take everything for face value, but examine it. And anything that is true can stand up to examination. So I think that I always say, I think if you're trying to search out more answers about God, God is flattered that you are saying, I want to learn more. I'm not sure, I've been taught this, but let me make sure that this is right. And so why would God ever be angry or upset? And I use the word God. But I know other people call it other things. But why would that be a bad thing, to go, I want to learn more, and I just want to make sure I know I'm on the right track? Because clearly, with all the different beliefs out there, if there is one track, then clearly most of us would be wrong. So really think about what you've been taught, and don't just take it blindly.
Yeah, and I think what Ronald is referring to is, why doesn't somebody just spell it out for us,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's God or whether it's a religion. And I think because it's a lot more complex or dynamic than we might think, and it's also, that's part of the journey, because a lot of it is not to be told what to believe, but to choose what to believe. Not to be told how to act, but to choose how to act. That's where we get our sovereignty. That's how we have our power in this world,
But I understand the question, because in so many of us have been taught that if you don't believe the right thing, then you're eternally banned from heaven, to put it nicely. And so I do get that question, because if you've grown up with a religion that tells you you can't get it wrong, because if you get it wrong, you're out. It makes you say, why doesn't God just tell us the right thing? And so again, it comes back to really think about, does that make sense? Logically, do some of the things you've taught make sense? Is it really that important? Or as Peter said, do we all come to different conclusions? And is that okay if we all come to different conclusions? Howard Storm also, who had a hellish experience, and then he met with Jesus, said that he also was told by Jesus, what religion is best? He asked him, and he said, whichever one brings you closest to God. So just as you said, Peter. Let's see. Okay.
Steve was just commenting on that.
Or maybe it was Steve that said that, not you. I was kind of half reading and half, yes. There it is. It was Steve. You're the one that said that. In your near-death experience, the correct religion was whichever one works best for them. Told not to judge anyone based on their religion, rather based on their good actions. And I remember too, if you haven't listened to Howard Storm, he's really fascinating. In my most recent Q&As, he also says that he said, really, it's how you live. Because he said, for example, he personally is a Christian, but he says if you're living a Christ-like life and you're not a Christian, you're still living that life. And to him, that's what's important. And so I think that one thing that has surprised me is when people come at, have a particular religion and then they're really unloving people, because I do think that, we are representing God, whether we're, whether we're representing God, whether we're parts of God, our actions do matter. So, all right.
I want to pick up on Rhonda comments. I so wish I could experience what you did, Steve. Steve apparently had an NDE. You are lucky to get a glimpse of it. So let me say two things. So number one, this is how far gone I am. All right. In February, I had surgery. First time in a hospital in 30 years for surgery, right? In a hospital, actually, at all. And I'm going into the surgery and I'm thinking, all right, guys, let's get an NDE in here, during the surgery, because I haven't experienced it. I want to find out what they're all raving about. So that's how far gone I am. But the other thing I'll say is, yes, it seems to be this amazing, beautiful, wonderful, otherworldly, beyond description experience. But almost all of them, especially if they die in a particularly horrific way, when they come back, it's not so easy. Many of them have to heal from injuries, or, they have a lifetime in many cases of hardship, of challenges, right? So yes, it's wonderful to experience that, but just remember, a lot of these people really go through hell, no pun intended, when they get back, healing from these, whatever it is, and dealing. And then again, maybe it's not a hellish physical recovery, but then they got to deal with their family who doesn't want to talk to them. It says they're crazy, or their doctor wants to put them on medication, or they get trolled on social media. It's definitely a double-edged sword from what I can tell.
I did something similar, Peter, to you, because I understand that we all would love that glimpse of the other side. And I have this nerve in my neck that occasionally I have to, which sounds horrible, but get it burned off because it causes some pain. So when I was getting the surgery the last time, the anesthesiologist was asking what I did, and I was telling about my podcast. And so jokingly, I said to him, bonus points if I have an NDE during this surgery. And he's like, no, that is the last thing I want. So yeah.
The doctors are not, they're not thrilled when that happens.
No, they would not be. Okay, guys, I know we've gotten a long time, so I'll just real quickly go kind of run through these. By the way, thank you everybody for sticking with this, for taking the time to put your comments in, put your questions in. You guys are so wonderful, and I really appreciate it. As Craig said, it's, earlier just about talking about community. I think that was you, Craig, and it's so important. Craig also says dynamic is a good term for this reality. And Rhonda, Steve says to Rhonda, yeah, everything is going to make sense on the other side. I think that is so true. I think a lot of our fears will completely disappear. Let's see. And Steve says what you said, Peter, about how when you come back, though, it's hard. And I do think that is very hard to come back into this world that can often be not so easy to live in when you've experienced all that love. And Craig talks about 7 to 10 years to integrate. By the way, Craig, you mentioned your cats earlier. I did notice that. So I'm glad that there are fellow cat lovers here. Let's see. And just more comments about that. Just wrapping up, just Rhonda is thanking us, and Elizabeth, thank you both. And many of you have said thank you. I just want to thank all of you. And Peter, I want to thank you too for taking the time out of your Saturday to meet with us. You've been just wonderful at answering questions. You're a wealth of knowledge with all of the people that you have interviewed.
Well, and likewise, Heather, and I've been a fan. I think I found a bunch of the people that I have in the film from watching your podcasts, over the last few years. So you're definitely a pioneer and somebody that I look up to. I do want to make a quick shout out. You and I met at the IONS conference in Phoenix this year. Well, actually last year. And I just want to thank the International Association for Near-Death Studies, ions.org. Wonderful organization. They've been a great friend of my film. I don't think I could have made this film without the support that I got from IONS. Wonderful, wonderful people. And it's a great organization if you're somebody who has a spiritually transformative experience and you don't have anybody to talk to or you don't know what to make of it. IONS has confidential sharing groups around the world and online that you can go to and get the support that you need. It's just such a beautiful organization. So check out ions.org. There is a conference happening in Chicago this year. Heather, are you going? Do you know?
Oh yeah, I'll be there,
Yeah.
and make sure
Okay,
you
so I'll
come
see you
say hi
there.
to me. Everybody that's watching, make sure you say hi. And Peter, if you're there, hopefully everybody will say hi to you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to mention one thing real quick too, because this is from a viewer, and this is Tyler Strunk, and he wrote this super cute book, and it's for kids, but it's about all the things in a very simple way of just who we are and where we go. And I just thought it was an adorable book. So I wanted to mention that. So I'll try to remember to put a link in the description. And by the way, for Peter's book, for this book, I always have a general link that you can go to all the books of anybody that's been on my show. I get a really, really tiny amount, like pennies on the dollar, if you click on that link, but it's one way to support me if you do buy a book. So that is something. But I will say Tyler did not, say I had to mention this or anything, but I just thought it was such a cute little book that I wanted to say that since he is a viewer of this channel. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
A couple of people asking about the film. The name of the film is Every Soul Knows. The website is everysoulknows.com. You can find out everything you need to know about the film there.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I am so grateful. And I hope that I will see some of you Friday, June 20th in Atlanta. You can find all the details on Peter's website. Again, we've mentioned a few times, but we'll also have a link in the description. And it would be great just to see some of you. Make sure you come up and say hello.
It's going to be a party, guys. So if you can get there, if you get to Atlanta or North Carolina or any of the other screenings, we have a lot of fun. We do after the film, which is as important as the film, I believe, we do an audience Q&A. So we have experiencers there. A bunch of people from the film are going to be there in Atlanta, and you will have a chance to ask them questions directly after the film. So if you can get to Atlanta on Friday, June 20th, please join us.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you again for all of the comments. I'm so grateful for all of you that are here today and that come back week after week. You are what this is all about. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.